Welcome to Ms. Behavior, the podcast for college student conduct professionals. I'm Colette.
And I'm Kurt.
And we are your hosts talking about all things student conduct. Kurt, when we finished our first episode, I was feeling awesome, but we forgot to brag about ourselves and grovel for listener feedback.
We didn't ask anybody to find us on Twitter.
No tweeters, no.
No like and subscribe. So I think now you have to really ask, how do people find us?
Yeah. So please, wonderful listener, we'll say this before we provide our content. Please subscribe, like us, and especially comment. People have been generous at sending us ideas and information from their worlds, and we love getting ideas for guests. So please interact with us and feel like you're part of the family.
And if we get really good at this, we might ask again at the end of the podcast, too.
Yeah. So for people who have not heard us, Kurt, why are you part of this podcast?
Well, I've been in the field of higher education for 30 years, and I started in the world of conduct, sort of. I was a hall director, and back then we did conduct, and my last student affairs job, well, I guess that's not true. One of my last student affairs jobs was in conduct. So for me, this is a little bit of nostalgia. I love hearing about what's going on in the world of conduct now that I'm a little removed from it. What about you?
You're always my go-to person when I have a dilemma. To this day. Similar. Got 30 years under my belt. I've done my 10,000 hours. I should just be honest. I'm a little judgy when I get into spaces. I care really deeply about doing this work really well. I love student conduct. It's my favorite thing in my career. We model for the world a potentially different way of managing conflict. And now, more than ever, we need some models. We need to break the mold of what we have in our society and try different things. And we need to think deeply about it. So, yeah, that's my
Love it.
Aspiration. So we wanted to talk this week about some big picture stuff and littler stuff. You and I had a conversation recently. You said you'd had a colleague that didn't feel like they could do this work anymore without a lawyer.
Yeah.
And it just was raising questions about what has this work become, or what were your ponderings?
Yeah, I part of me wonders if I was just naive when I was doing conduct work in my 30s. I felt completely comfortable with all the cases that I heard, and now one of my colleagues said that they had a student who wanted to bring their lawyer to a case. And I thought, I don't know what I would do in that situation. I would not feel comfortable going into a conduct meeting with a student and a lawyer. It boggled my mind. So I cannot imagine what it must be like to do this work now in such a litigious era. Have you had that experience of a student bringing a lawyer to a case?
Yeah, and in some cases I actually encourage students.
Okay.
So in that way, maybe I've seen enough where it's not as scary to me. I actually, at my last school, updated our code. It said no lawyers allowed, which you're allowed to do at a private school. But I was I think it's really important to welcome lawyers in when a student has criminal charges pending.
That's a good point.
And if you welcome lawyers in, you can train lawyers. And I've also seen scummy lawyers. I saw enough also where I'm oh, they have a playbook. Every lawyer is not their own lawyer. There is a definite playbook, especially around sexual misconduct.
That makes sense.
That was bullying and scummy and really counter to our educational goals. And then, Title IX made lawyers a reality. They had to be in processes. But I saw schools deferring to lawyers instead of no, you've got a process. It's a good process. It's a process that helps all students. Doesn't always have happy outcomes, but what you're saying, there is a lot of fear.
So what is it like? Could you unpack that? I'm just curious, like when you're in a meeting and you know that a lawyer is coming, how does it change how you approach the situation, or does it? Do you just do what you would normally do?
In a perfect world, you do what you would normally do, but you set guidelines. I think in a perfect world, you would talk to that lawyer ahead of time and just say, this is our process. Here's what you're allowed to do. Here's where we welcome you. We'll offer plenty of time if you and your client need to step out of the room and whisper, even if you're not allowed to participate. We want this to go as well as it can. We love your student. Your student is not our enemy. I was incredibly lucky too. I worked with a woman. Her name was Jessica Eacock Rotundo. I need to tell her I'm talking about her. We co-heard a case once, and the lawyer who came was very famous. They dealt with a case that was in the newspapers all the time and had won a case that seemed in the newspapers like it was unwinnable. And there was a system there where he was not supposed to be participating in the hearing, and she warned him that if he kept talking that she would kick him out, and he said, no you won't, and she said, yes I will, and he shut up and he followed our process, and it went very well. His student represented themselves very well, and we had a system that let them tell their story and was fair. But watching that, I'm like, oh, this is a master class in how to deal with a lawyer, but you have to give it back. And I'm not that person.
I don't know if I'm that person either.
Yeah, but I saw like that is, and as I've read, I've gone to workshops, like how do you work with attorneys, and some of it is you just have to be really assertive, because they will test the boundaries.
Yeah, I imagine that that's probably a big factor. They're coming into our space, just holding the line and reminding them of what our practice and our policy and procedures are.
Yeah, and I guess given my style, that might be the way if I practiced. Just want to remind you, I know this is different. You probably have some muscle memory from going into court. This is not court, but I'm speaking from somebody who's never worked at a public school, so you probably have guidelines that, your state and federal government mandate, where I'm at a private school and it's a little looser.
Yeah, I don't know about the legal differences between a conduct hearing at a private versus a public institution.
Yeah, that might be a great topic.
Yeah.
We should have some guests come on that could talk about it more eloquently than I can.
My experience is watching an episode of The Good Wife where they had legal counsel on a college campus. So not very well versed from a reality standpoint.
Actually, one of the best hearings I've ever seen on TV was in Modern Family, when one of the daughters got caught drinking. And I'm like, oh, they did a fairly credible job at having a dean's meeting.
That would also be an interesting topic, like representations of conduct hearings in TV. Like, how accurate did they get it?
You can tell students whose parents, and the advice they're getting is based on what they see on TV and that they think is real. It was always funny when students would come in my office and they're like, I was expecting mahogany bench.
Where's your gavel?
We're just going to sit at my little kitchen table here in my office. Like, yeah. I am curious, though, for folks who are listening, like the fear level right now of doing this work. And for people who are young in their career, a lot of colleagues are one-person offices. And so they don't have someone who gets this work to go to. And even our general counsels operate sometimes like they think it's a court system and a punitive system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of our friends, Cheney from the University of Missouri, this is sort of related. We'll see. Keep me honest here. We asked listeners what are some things you did earlier in your career that you would never do now? And Cheney wrote that they used to be more friendly, like bring a like, oh, we're just buddies here, approach to hearings, and would never do that now. And I was like, that's probably a really good decision. Made me think about my privilege now that I'm older, that I can dig in a little deeper with empathy and like, oh, I totally get that. Yeah, I understand, because there's no chance that student's going to think of me like I'm trying to be friends with them. I'm just
Yeah.
really friendly.
It's funny to me to think about my first job as a hall director, because I was 22 or 23 years old, and how close in age I was to the students that I was talking to in those conduct meetings. Because I always wanted to try to be relatively cool, but I don't know that I ever figured out how to set appropriate boundaries. So I'm sure I came across as more parochial than I needed to, just to have some kind of like illusion of boundary. But I do think it would be easier for me as an older person now to go into a conduct hearing, one, and feel like I have the authority to be there and the experience to help them understand what the situation was from my perspective that maybe I wouldn't have had the confidence to do when I was younger and a new professional.
Yeah. I still have two voices in my head, like when I meet with students, like how much to share in order to connect. I think it's really important to connect. But then how much do you expose?
Right. Yeah. That thread of emotional intelligence again, I think.
If you I think I know what emotional intelligence is, but how are you defining that?
I think for me, it's just the ability to pick up on social cues and approaching the situation from a lens of humanizing the person that you're talking to. I think earlier in my career, I was very rulesy, and I just went in assuming that everybody saw the world the way that I saw it and experienced things in a similar way, understood the policies and procedures in the way that I did. And for me, it's just taking a step back and saying, what might their lived experience be? And giving them space to talk through and say, this is how I'm experiencing it, instead of making assumptions.
Is that different from empathy?
That's a good question. I think empathy is a component of emotional intelligence, I would say. Yeah, that's what I would say. I don't know, but I guess I also think of that for me, I think it's hard for me sometimes to pick up on social cues. And I don't know if that's an empathy thing or if it's a different component of emotional intelligence.
When we have listeners hopefully come on as guests, I want to ask every single one of them about a time that they got in trouble or had to be held accountable. And I'm curious, maybe the question is, do you lean more toward being a rule follower or being a rule breaker? And it sounds like you were a rule follower. And you disclosed last time you were an INTJ on the Myers-Briggs personality sorter, and I am too, but I'm more of a natural rule breaker.
So let me ask this. Did you ever get caught breaking a rule?
Uh-huh.
What was that like? So now we're going to test this. How much are we sharing on here?
Well, I have to go through the many. I'm making light of this, but it is light. What's the best one? When I was in college, before I was 21, one of my friends worked at the ID place where they did the ID photos, and I got her to give me some of the little plastic sleeves that you put the ID in, because somehow I thought using cardstock and a typewriter I could make my own like fake, I don't know what I was thinking, but I thought I could make a fake ID for myself, and all I needed were these lamination things. And like 2 years go by and I lost my wallet on campus, and it got turned into the lost and found. And when I went to go pick it up, the woman there had these plastic sleeves that I had tucked in my wallet and never used. And she recognized them from the ID machine. And she asked me about it. And I was so naive. Even though I was a rule breaker, I was also honest. So like, yeah, I was gonna make myself a fake ID, but you can see I'm 21 now, and that never happened. Well, who gave you the slips?
No.
And I was like every student I've ever had in a hearing, like, I'm not gonna rat out my friend. It's not her fault. Like, I was the one making the choice, but I remember she was so mean, and then I made the mistake, and I'm like, I didn't break any rules. I'm an RA now. She's like, oh, you're an RA? And I'm like, well, I was an RA.
Not anymore.
And I hauled myself across, I ran across campus to go talk to my supervisor and tell her what happened. She was very understanding, but I still remember that when I meet with students, like, I don't want to be that woman.
I don't know that I ever had a conduct meeting that I was the student. And I'm trying to think of like the one time I felt justified in breaking a rule. I went to a research one for my undergrad, and we had study rooms on every floor. And for some reason, Residence Life locked all the study doors during finals week. So we didn't have any place to study. And my friend and I said, you know what? We're going to go take the locks off the doors. And you could get into the study rooms from two different doors on each side of the residence hall. And I was unscrewing the lock on one side, and he was unscrewing the lock on the other side. And it just so happened that the RA came to his side, and I could see what was happening. And I very quickly took my screwdriver and went back to my room. And my poor friend Eric got written up and had to go have a conduct meeting. And he came back, he said he got a written warning, and I thought, oh my God, it's the end of the world. The one time I thought about doing something wrong, somebody else had to pay the price. And I'm not saying I never broke a rule again, but I was like, too risky. So yeah, that was my experience. And Eric lived, he lived to tell, so it was all fine. He's a normal functioning member of society now, in case anybody's worried about him.
With his warning, yep.
Didn't show up in his permanent record or his job application. FBI background checks, completely clean.
When I meet with students, I almost never meet with somebody where I cannot picture myself doing what they did. Like, under the right circumstances. I don't know if it's because I'm so incredibly empathetic, or that I'm just a bad girl. But I can see, if I work hard enough, I can see what motivated their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So I might not have done what they did, but I can understand. Like, I needed to get that good grade because I dream of going to medical school, or my parents are paying a lot of money and I needed to show them that I'm successful. I wanted to fit in with my friends.
And that's the empathy element that I think I have to work more directly on, because my first assumption is that somebody did something bad and that I think of the worst case scenario. I think I'm just cynical that they just wanted to cheat. And I have to prompt myself to think about, well, why might they have done this? What are some good reasons that might have put them in a position to do this? But it's not my first instinct. So yeah, it's more of a checklist, internal checklist for me.
So I am deeply empathetic in those settings, but I can be flipped to anger, and it's very, very rarely. And the way it manifests usually is for me to get ice cold, and I just sort of distance myself from any emotions. But there are these rare cases where I can feel my face start to get red. And those are students where I am working so hard, where what they did was so obvious. Like, it's on the video, or your paper is an exact word for word match, including the typos, as your roommates. And they're going to deny it until they die. And I'm like, I am here. My heart is open. You're not going to get kicked out of school. Okay, now what do you want to tell me? I didn't do it. And that's where, like, I would love to hear ideas from people listening to this of, like, the liar with a heart of gold, or, like, whatever that motivation is so much stronger than love, the love that I'm showing.
It feels sometimes like people live in an alternate reality because I can't put myself in a position where, when faced with very obvious evidence that I've done something wrong, that I would continue to deny that I had done something wrong. Yeah.
And these are settings where I'm like, we're trying to make it safe. I think then it has become about my ego. Like, I'm working so hard to make you feel comfortable, and you're just going to keep telling this ridiculous story. But I would love some strategies for that.
I'm trying to picture you angry.
It's very, I was just listening to an interview with Chris Rock where he talks about an incident in his childhood where he let his anger get the best of him, and for the rest of his life, he kept that buried. And I'm like, oh, I totally get that. Don't like the anger.
I was thinking about the original thing that prompted this discussion, things that we wouldn't do that maybe we used to do. It's so weird for me to think about being a hall director and having to adjudicate cases that happen in your residence hall where you live. And for the most part, it was not bad, but I can think of, I was working at a school in a very warm part of the country. Are we saying places that we worked? I'm going to just be vague for now.
We haven't yet, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. So the residence hall was an old motel. So all of the doors faced outward. And we had a student that had become something of a problem from a noise perspective. Bouncing a basketball in a building where everything, like you're bouncing it on a concrete slab, everybody can hear it. RAs, tried the nice thing, hey, it's quiet hours. Can you maybe not do that? And this is a student that, in the face of any form of authority, just became defiant. And ultimately, I had to meet with him more than once. My car was keyed at one point. Somebody left a very nasty note in my mailbox, and I suspected that it was him. The other interesting thing about this building was my outfacing wall was entirely windows. So I remember after a particularly tough meeting with him, I thought, I'm sleeping right in front of a glass window that somebody could just throw a brick through. And I took a cushion and I slept in the hallway outside of my bathroom door for a week because I thought I don't want to be in a situation where I'm in the middle of the night having something thrown through this large glass wall in my bedroom. So just thinking back to that whole situation of knowing that you have to have an incredibly horrible conversation with somebody, no matter what, it's not going to be good. And then having to live in the same space with them for the rest of the year. I don't know if I could do that again.
Yeah. And we are, I'm Gen X. Are you?
Mm-hmm.
And we're the supposed, tough ones. But
I have my limits.
I want to do a Halloween episode on this show so listeners start thinking, about, the scariest conduct experiences we've had. Because I always tell people, 99% of my job is not. My husband thinks every morning, I'm going to get stabbed by somebody for doing conduct. No, I'm the nice teacher lady. I'm like, that is 99%. I've got that 1% too, and you do too.
Yep.
I'm being rude. I'm looking off screen here because I think somebody wrote into us about personal safety. Yeah, our listener Kathy, who is a consultant for higher education, helping institutions do the big picture stuff, talked about taking a lot of pride in meeting with students one-on-one, not being scared, being assertive, and now would think twice about that, putting different precautions in place and putting more of a focus on their personal safety.
Yeah, the world has changed since the 1900s. I just think about all of the school shootings that I hear about now. I was talking to a colleague that worked for a school in West Virginia where they are now allowing guns on campus. I can't imagine working in an environment with firearms, and especially doing a conduct job, it's just an extra layer of things to think about now.
It is. I hesitate to put this into the universe. When I read about shootings, it feels like it is the counselor ladies or, the nice teacher that was kind to the student, not the conduct people. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a conduct person be killed in their job.
That's a good point.
But it contradicts what I'm saying, too, about, like, I want to be the voice of compassion or somebody that listens. But then do you have to balance that with an equal proportion of just being smart?
Yeah. And I go back and forth about this. I hear people frequently saying there are more students coming to us with mental health issues these days, but I do wonder if that's accurate, or if we're just more as a society aware of the mental health crisis that maybe always existed.
That could be 10 episodes.
Yeah.
Of a question.
But it does make me curious about how many of the cases that we hear now have a mental health component. Because from a news perspective, I live in Maryland, and we hear about a lot of officer-related shootings, and not often. Some of the ones that we hear about most frequently are people who have mental health issues. And was there maybe a different way that they could have handled that situation that wouldn't have resulted in somebody losing their life?
Yeah. I was really lucky, the National Organization for Conduct Folks, ASCA, and I always mess up, like the Association for College Student Conduct Administrators. They host a summer intensive training called the Gehring Institute, and I got to go and do the track on where mental health and conduct overlap. And the Venn diagram now is very overlapped. And it's hard to tell the difference now in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
Is it manifesting differently? We talked about the article last week about how boys in the 1900s,
Yes,
they were getting into gangs and causing crimes, and now that they're still having issues, but it plays out like more attacking themselves, like the mental health stuff, anxiety, suicidality. Yeah. It's hard to be young.
it does feel like, just thinking back to my days, as I don't know that I ever had any formal training, and I don't know if that would work in today's world. I feel like you all have so many tools available to you that you need to have, that I don't think they were on my radar as a professional in my 20s and 30s.
Tools for
Even just like professional development offerings. I don't remember ever going to something that was specific for conduct in any of the roles that I had. I think all the training that we had for conduct came from observing other people. It was, an hour during hall director training.
Yeah.
I can't imagine getting by on that in today's world, doing an effective job that resulted in a good outcome for the students and for the school.
That's true. And so many of us came up through residence life where we were going to the Akuho, like we were part of the Mid-Atlantic. I joined CHO when I worked in South Carolina. The thought of going to ASJA at the time, no, my specialty is residence life, not conduct, or judicial, as we called it. That's true. But I'll take this spirit that it's meant in. Thank God for COVID and the way, at least in the conduct world, people started gathering in Zoom meetings.
Okay.
Which we could have been doing the whole time.
Yeah.
But my closest communities now are through the Zoom communities that I joined during the pandemic.
That's amazing.
Yeah. You are right, though. But how many people do that?
How many institutions expect folks to do that? That would be a great survey topic. Like, what kind of professional development do you pursue every year? What's your go-to?
And how many even know that it exists? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny when I think about the training that we did in like hall director training or what we did with RAs or our hall directors. I do feel like I spent a decent amount of time in conduct hearings, and that could have just been the environments that I was working in. But there wasn't a proportionate amount of training, and as an older adult, I do think about now it was very reactive. And are there things that we could have been doing proactively to um, get out in front of conduct related issues? I'd only heard of community standards uh, a little bit before I started working with you uh, back in the 2000s, and it was mind blowing to me. It was very innovative, and the impact that it had on community was you could document it. But it still baffles my mind that more schools did not adopt that as a model because of how successful it was.
The program you're talking about, community standards, for people who are not familiar with that, there was a program that the University of Nevada, Las Vegas developed, and it was a peer governance model where they got rid of a lot of policies that really were about relationships. So the guy with the basketball, the RA would not have confronted that. The students around them would have been trained to go knock on the door, talk to them, or talk about it at their next community meeting, and they held regular community meetings. That's a hard sell now, Kurt.
Which is unfortunate because I stand by the fact that I thought it was brilliant.
We eliminated so many. Used to have a name for it, like crimes of laziness or something.
Fire alarm pulls.
Fire alarm pulls were eliminated, and those had been frequent. Throwing things out windows, and busting into vending machines.
Yep.
And there was an institution that we worked at where students had resources.
Mm-hmm.
That school was pretty stingy with financial aid. And so students weren't breaking in because they were food insecure, but they'd never been held accountable by their peers, only by authorities. Yeah.
Which is why I think that the basketball situation would have been a great use of community standards, because I do think I was dealing with a student that had some oppositional defiant issues, and maybe hearing from their peers that this is really just not cool would have been a more clean solution.
So that's a hard sell now. I've heard every excuse in the book for why it won't work. I've seen it work.
Yeah.
I can show you data about how it worked. Students can't handle it. It's too much pressure. They don't have the skills. Right. They practice the skills.
I would love to do a where are they now for students who came up through that community standards model at the school we worked at, because I do wonder, like, the skills that they learned in those meetings about just having, how do you have a non-confrontational discussion with somebody about their behavior? That's got to be gold out in the work world and just in like relationships in general. I really hope it did what I think it did, outside of just what you said with reducing vandalism, and those were the immediate outcomes. What were the long-term impacts of that
the
model?
learning, were they, because I do love theory to practice, were they developmentally, did they advance further?
Mm-hmm.
Did they carry it on? And let's do that.
They may be running the world now for all we know.
I think we do know some of,
I'm thinking of at least two that I think are doing that kind of stuff. But
I think one became a congresswoman, and others are educational and business CEOs.
I'm going to need to know who that congressperson was.
Yeah.
Is it SS?
Yes.
Okay.
Who sent us a shout out on LinkedIn.
Love it.
Yeah. So I have a feeling we could get SS.
One of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
I still, in this office, in a box that I've not yet unpacked, I still have the framed picture of was it the mission, vision, and value? Was it the values? Was it the values picture?
I also hung those in my office.
It goes with me everywhere.
Yeah. Whew. We have spent a half hour at least on things that we would do differently this time around. If you are listening, we hope that you are going to join in with this conversation because there's a lot more to say and a lot more for us to learn.
Could be a part two.
Yeah. But let's sign off. And next time, we're going to talk about some weed and other great timely topics. So thanks for listening to Misbehavior.
And don't forget to follow us on all of the social media platforms and like and share. Please and thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you soon, Kurt.
See you. Bye.